Is it true, do you think, if you're a younger person out there today and you're looking out at the future of your life and you're looking at your options that are in front of you right now and your work situation and your investment opportunities and housing or no housing, rent, buy, all the options that are out there, is it true that as a young person you've missed out?
No.
No, it's not.
Welcome to The Lowdown, Wellington's #1 real estate podcast. We're here to talk about New Zealand's obsession with housing and, how that interplays with society and whether it's a good or bad thing. I'm here with my good mate, Adam. He is, you're the chairman of the Wellington Property Investors?
No, I was for a brief period of time, but that was way too much.
You're just a real estate agent?
No, I'm just a real estate. I've been on the committee for 20 years.
Okay, yeah. Good. I think this is a fascinating topic. It's something that obviously there is no perfect answer to, I think. But, if we look at the last 40 years, we've had a secular, decline in interest rates and a corresponding huge increase in property prices over that time. And if we look at our parents, I know for my parents, their home was their retirement asset.
Well, that's like this classic Kiwi model, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I don't see it so much now, but 20, 30, 40 years ago, the model was buy the worst house in the best street, put your blood, sweat and tears into renovating it, over a 5-year, 10-year period or whatever, sell and then upgrade and do it again. And eventually when you retire, when the kids are gone, you retire, sell this very valuable home that you've had absolutely all your eggs, all your financial
mortgage, right?
Yeah,
and then it's your retirement.
Sell and downgrade, and then the balance was your retirement fund.
Yeah, and of course these days when people or the baby boomers have started, of course, selling it and using those funds to go into a retirement village where they're cared for typically,
and then invest the balance in some sort of income producing
exactly
assets, right? But that doesn't seem to be the case so more. I mean, that's not how, I don't think that's how the young first home buyers are thinking now. That's what their plan is.
Yeah, it's really hard to know. I don't honestly have the answer to that. I know that has certainly been, historically been true.
But they all want houses that are done up and finished. And
I think they're still.
Don't you think?
I mean, the issue is we've had this massive increase and people are like, why do you buy a first home? Why do you get excited about it, right? Why do you want to have $800,000 of debt? You only want that if you think it's going to increase in value. If you weren't expecting an increase in value, you wouldn't borrow $800,000 to buy it, would you?
Well, there are other motivating forces, aren't there? But certainly over the last number of decades, like you keep talking about 40 years, that's about right, isn't it? And what's underlying that is this incredible increase, like you've said, on average 7% on average, of course, doubling every 10 years for the last 40 years or something. And so when people see that happening, there's an enormous driver to, I want to be part of that. I want to capture some of that increase in the wealth effect and so on. And of course, what's one of the main reasons that you're saying is that why that's happened is because interest rates have gone from 20% in the 1980s to 5% today. And that can't happen in the next 40 years, can it?
No. So you would imagine that house price growth may be a little bit more tempered because of that. Obviously there can still be a cycle where
there's always going to be a cycle as long as there are human beings involved with the associated psychology.
Constrained land supply and you've got increasing population. So when you take that into account, house prices can still go up and still can potentially outpace inflation over that time. But I just think it's interesting, and I think Kiwis are to some degree a little bit risk averse. I mean, remember the 1987 stock market crash was a big thing in my parents. I remember them talking about it a lot in the 90s, and I think people were suspicious of other assets. And I think one of the problems we face in New Zealand as a society with this obsession with housing is that houses aren't productive assets. There are good reasons to invest in real estate, and it provides supply for the rental market. But the reality is, it's not creating a huge amount of jobs and GDP growth and productivity like shares and business does.
So you're not. There is this narrative out there that investing in residential real estate is not productive, right? They're not productive assets. So that's not to say that it doesn't fulfill a purpose and a role. It's still an important thing, right? But what you mean is it doesn't produce economic growth. It doesn't create jobs. It doesn't really increase prosperity. Is that what you mean by that?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And I think our capital markets could be deeper which would provide more, investment growth, more productivity, more jobs, and more general increase in the standard of living in New Zealand if people from a younger age had more of a focus on those as assets for retirement, as opposed to just thinking about housing all the time.
Yeah. And so when you say capital markets could be deeper, generally you just mean more money in the capital markets.
Exactly.
Right? More money in assets other than real estate.
Yeah.
Obviously,
people investing
Kiwi
in their
Saver,
own, and even a good example would be people investing in their own businesses, right? Like if people were more willing to take those kind of risks and invest in really, because these days you can grow a business that has a global market from New Zealand, easily.
Easily.
Compared to the past, you can do that.
Yes.
The globalized world, the internet. There are many ways. Look at Xero as a great example.
Well, there are multiple examples, aren't there? Totally.
Yeah. You don't need to be in Silicon Valley. You don't need to be in, so and one of the problems is the reason that those places are great is there are more resources there. Because because of exactly what I'm talking about, because they have got the bigger capital markets, right?
Much deeper capital markets.
So you can see where the flow of resources is really important, really powerful for growing the economy. And
I imagine the psychology is vastly different too. That's what you're talking about, right?
It's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Kiwi Saver obviously is heading in that direction, isn't it? Or we're bound to be making a difference in that space, right? How long's Kiwi Saver been going? Is it 20 years?
No idea.
15 years, something like that. So that's obviously growing over time, and that will create it's creating a large amount of capital that can be used to invest in these assets.
Yeah.
Obviously, at the moment, the government's trying to attract a lot more international capital into the country to build up our infrastructure assets and so on. But
there's a sort of irony here too, isn't there? Where obviously what our parents do influences our behaviour, and yet of course we're all chasing the same assets as looking for as first-time buyers, for example, or people wanting to invest in property. Whereas ironically, if there was more spread in what people were chasing in terms of where they were putting their resources, then the house price growth would be lower. Houses would be more affordable for those that wanted to get into them. So there's a sort of an irony there that we're creating our own problem through this probably intergenerational kind of cultural obsession with housing. And we're not the only country, and we're certainly I don't want to make it sound like New Zealanders are doing this as a we're the only one that's doing it. But you look at the outcome eventually. You look at like London. In places like, that where people just don't own houses. They rent apartments because you can't afford it. Right. And that's
or they own apartments, or they own small flats and that sort of thing too. And they're leasehold. A very different market and much more established, of course. But you said before that if there was more capital into other asset classes, that would perhaps suggest that our real estate prices would be lower. Would they though? At the moment, you can buy a property, you can buy a home for less than it would cost to build it.
Well, if less people were buying them, there'd be less demand. So of course,
absolutely,
of course, property would be
absolutely. Yeah. Look, that's a question because I just think a lot of the price is driven by the cost of replacement.
I don't know. I don't think it. It'll play a role, but remember, let's use Wellington as an example, right? There's barely any land supply. And the reality is it's a scarce resource, and we've got more people chasing it. If less people were chasing it, the price would be higher.
I totally understand the logic. It makes absolutely 100% sense. But I've also seen reports and showing data that shows in places where population has declined, the value of the real estate in those towns has almost kept pace to the same degree that Auckland has. And so you've had stagnant population. So demand is not increasing there. So it's actually more linked to the cost of production than it is to increasing demand. I suppose that even the population that go there, they earn more money, so they can afford to pay more.
I think the answer there is that the cost of production would be lower too.
Right.
So part of the reason that there's inflation and the cost of production is because of the demand for that too. So there'll be less. There'll be less of all of it across the whole market, right? And so, there are other implications of all this. I mean, one of them are the cultural sort of us and them divide that we end up with when we have this feeling that people have, that young people have, that the baby boomers have had reaped all these rewards, and that they're left behind as well. And those are just not good. They're just not good things for society, for us to be feeling angry at and the sort of class system that.
Well, any major division, whether it be an economic division or political division, anything that's majorly divided like that, it causes enormous stress in a society, and ends up in a bad place.
And I mean, I suppose it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you think about it from a purely rational perspective, for the difference between having a house and not having one is truly enormous, right?
Huge.
I'm talking about the people that are so far below middle class that they don't even have a bed to sleep in.
When you say having a house, you don't mean owning one versus not owning one.
No,
you mean as long as you've got somewhere to go and,
to sleep
and rest and rest at night.
Yeah. And yet, if you have a bed to sleep in and you have a spare bed,
doesn't make a big difference.
You can only sleep in one every night, right? So I guess what I'm using that as an analogy to really just say, that if you think about the difference between the middle class and the rich, it's just toys. It really is just toys. If you think about it purely from a rational perspective, like who cares?
You can have more holidays, you can wear better clothes, you can drive a faster car, you can have a bigger house, you can have your swimming pool, whatever.
And through, the sort of adaptation, I mean, a lot of these things are just aesthetic for a start, right? Like whether your house is flasher or not, it's just aesthetic. Yeah. And you have this, what I call hedonic adaptation, where you desire something and when you've got it, you just adapt to it, right? So you don't actually feel any better anyway. So actually from a purely rational perspective, it just doesn't matter whether you have all this wealth or not, really. But as long as you have enough to make your needs met and be happy and excited about life, right?
Yeah.
And so I sort of feel like from a rational perspective, the difference between the poor and the middle class is enormous.
Yes.
And the difference between the middle class and the rich is less than our brains make it feel or think. Like we think, the 1%,
totally.
This massive gulf, because there is on an economic basis, but on a lifestyle basis, I just don't think there is.
Doesn't stop anyone, no matter where you are on that spectrum, doesn't stop anybody from wanting to get to the next rung up.
No, but my point is that even though from a rational perspective that may be true, or it certainly appears to be so for me, it doesn't change the feeling that people have.
No.
And so that cultural, unfortunately, the cultural divide of a class system causes social unrest. It causes people to feel, not worthy. It causes to get angry. And we can see that kind of division going on in the world, all over the world right now, in ways, that kind of often there are political reasons for it, but I think also people feel disaffected. And so I think, and I actually feel quite lucky to live in Wellington where we have less of that. We often talk about the fact there's no real high end in Wellington. I mean, you look at Auckland and Queenstown, and they have 20 and 30 and even $40 million sales.
Yeah.
I mean, Wellington caps out at 5.
That's right. And 5 is extreme.
Yeah, that's to be very rare for that to happen. I mean, it might be one of those sales a year, but and probably only a handful over sort of 3.5.
Yeah.
And whereas the average sale price is about $1 million. So we don't really have so much of that class system here, but we do still feel it that we can't get into the housing market, right? We feel strongly that the generation before us came, and so I don't know what the answer is, other than my view is that people should think about productive assets, because I think that would help both sides, and I think it would be very good for the economy, good for jobs. I think there's nothing wrong with wealth per se, because it's important. Otherwise, we don't have economic growth, right? And and people who are in business, in my experience, they're not just thinking about money. In fact, if they are, then they're never going to be successful. They have all their stakeholders to think about, right? Their staff, their clients. They've got to add value to the world. Otherwise, they're just not successful. So these things are really important. And housing is just a roof over your head, And so if people could sort of, if we could change that sort of cultural view of that a little bit, I think that would be a positive thing for the future.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's all good stuff. There is a popular narrative out there, and you've sort of touched on it, that the younger generation have missed out, and that the baby boomers especially are the ones who've, stolen something from them because they have seen these big time increases in real estate. Is it true, do you think, if you're a younger person out there today and you're looking out at the future of your life and you're looking at your options that are in front of you right now and your work situation and your investment opportunities and housing or no housing, rent, buy, all the options that are out there, is it true that as a young person you've missed out?
No,
it's not. It's
not true. I mean, timing does matter, and you can get unlucky and you can get lucky with timing. There's no doubt about that, right? I mean, I've watched family members buy at the peak and then have to sell because of relationship breakdowns at the bottom of the market.
That's harsh.
And then only afford to buy back in again at the peak again.
Oh.
And, I've seen that stuff happen, right? And I think there is no, one thing about house prices I think is important to note is there is no free lunch here. In fact, the reality is that if you think about the way that the world works, it's not set up for perfect, right? And often certainly when we argue one direction, we're actually implying without realizing it that utopia exists.
That there is a right way for the world to be.
But the truth is it's not that neat, right?
No.
And I mean, one example of that is a first-time buyer today who's angry about the baby boomers. Why do they want to buy it? They want to buy it because they've got the same instincts as everyone else does, that they want it to go up in value.
So yes. It's not fair. I missed out and I want to get in on the action.
Yeah, exactly. And so if they want to get in on the action, it's because they want it to go up too, in which case what does that happens to the next generation? So, I mean, there is no,
we are a messed up bunch, aren't we?
So the way I would characterize it is, ideally in an ideal world, there's equal opportunity, but not equal outcome.
You can never force equal outcomes. That's communism, right? And we've seen many examples of that not working.
Exactly. A lot of pillars like what you value matters. So as a society, if we value education, anti-corruption, and redistribution of wealth to those that need it most, we're going to get pretty close to great, but it's never going to be perfect.
No. It's always going to be a certain degree of messiness.
Yeah. So I think that's for as far as we can go on that. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Hey, that was the lowdown. Appreciate you tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we will do it all over again next week. Thank you.
See you next time.